The Islamic Foundation presents Taqwa in Times of Difficulty, Part 2.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to start off by kind of recapping what we mentioned in the last segment, which was regarding the importance of having taqwa in times of difficulty. We'll continue today, inshallah, in that same vein. Last week we spoke a lot about the verse بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. That whosoever has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he will make for him an exit strategy. And we spoke a lot at great lengths about how people consult with exit strategy consultants and pay them top dollar for finding solutions to their problems. Whereas as Muslims, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given us a solution for our problems. And that is to bring forth taqwa so that he will create for you an exit strategy for whatever issue you may have in your life, whether that be business related, marriage related, health related, as in the case right now with the COVID-19 virus, or any of the byproducts effects that the COVID-19 virus has bringing into the lives of many people, such as we spoke about the reduction of wages of many healthcare workers, loss of jobs for people who were affected by the shutdown. And all of these issues and problems can be alleviated through bringing forth taqwa as per this particular verse. I want to speak, I forgot to mention a narration where the Prophet ﷺ actually spoke about this verse as well. And he commented on this verse. And he said that, لو أن الناس كلهم أخذوا بها لكفتهم. That if the people, all of them, were to take hold of this verse, the one about bringing forth taqwa, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them an exit strategy, that it would suffice for them, for all of them. So it shows the importance that where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam laid down in this verse, that if all the people took hold of this verse in a very sincere manner and applied it into their lives, then the reality of this verse is that it would suffice for them in all their affairs. From here, I want to go on to actually defining taqwa. A lot of people have a certain concept in mind of what taqwa entails, what exactly means, but it's important to give it a definition. And the way that the scholars define taqwa is they said that they defined it as أن يجعل بينه وبين ما يخشاه من غضبه وقاية تقيه منه هي امتثال أوامره واجتناب نواهيه. In short, what they mention is that an individual makes a protection between himself and between what scares him or what fear he has from the ghadab of Allah, the anger. It's the best, most suitable word that I could come up with in English, from the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this feeling of having of wanting to be protected from the fear of the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will actually protect him. So having fear of the punishment of the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala serves as a safety mechanism. In the sense that it serves as a safety mechanism to protect you from going astray. And they further defined it as that it is being in compliance with the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to refrain from whatever he has prohibited. To give a slightly different definition of taqwa, we have a saying by Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh, where he said that he defined taqwa as هي الخوف من الجليل, that it is fear from the majestic one. وَالْعَمْلُ بِالتَّنْزِيلِ, and to do amal or practice with the Quran, that which has been revealed. وَالْقَنَاعَةُ بِالْقَلِيلِ, and to be content with little. And then finally, وَالْإِسْتِعْدَادُ لِيَوْمِ الرَّحِيلِ, and to be prepared for the day of departure. Day of departure, literally, but here it would mean to prepare for your death date. So he defined taqwa in 4 ways: to have fear of the majestic one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Jalil, to practice with what is found in the Quran and Sunnah, to be content with little from the dunya, and to prepare for your day of departure, for your day of demise. And then we can define now how to put this definition into practice by a narration where Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he asked Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu about taqwa. And he asked him, like, what exactly is taqwa? So Ubay, he in turn said to him, have you ever taken a thorny path? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, how did you walk or traverse that thorny path? And he said that he would lift up his clothes a little bit so that the thorns and the pricks of the thorns would not get stuck to his clothing. And then he would walk very carefully, looking to see where he's stepping, to ensure that he would not be pricked by any of these thorns on that path. And he told him that's exactly what taqwa in practice is. Taqwa in practice is that when you traverse through this dunya, you are careful not to be pricked by any of the thorns that may cause the ghadab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which how we defined it earlier. You are careful that you do not get stuck by any of these thorns that pulls you into any type of misdeed that will then result in the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is how taqwa in action really comes into play. From here, I want to speak a little bit about, we defined taqwa. We spoke about how to apply it in your life through this narration of Umar radiallahu anhu. And now I want to talk about the levels of taqwa. And the reason why I want to talk about the levels of taqwa is because here, for the listener, he'll be able to perceive in his own mind on which level of taqwa he stands. And the importance of knowing this is that it will give him an indication of where he currently is, what he needs to do, and what is the next level for him to persevere to aspire to. So there's a lot of benefits in knowing the levels of taqwa. And so I'll simply convey to you the different levels of taqwa. And then you as a listener, inshallah, my hope is that you will be able to understand where you are and then act in accordance to that level. So Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi, rahimahullah, he was a famous mufassir and scholar of the Maliki school in Muslim Spain, in Granada. He has a great work in tafsir. And in his tafsir, he mentions the 5 levels of taqwa. And he mentions that the first level of taqwa is where the servant has taqwa against kufr. So in other words, the first level of taqwa is the station of iman, where an individual fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, realizes the truth, and then brings forth iman. This is the first level. Alhamdulillah, we are all Muslims, so there is no need for us to, alhamdulillah, we've already traversed this first level. And this is a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second level is where the vast majority of Muslims fall into. And this is the level where Ibn Juzay describes as where what is needed is that the individual has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to ma'asi and hurumat, those misdeeds that entail punishment and are haram, impermissible. And he calls this the station of tawbah. So in other words, what this station requires the individual to do is to build up that taqwa, to realize that he's engrossed in misdeeds, and to then do tawbah of these misdeeds. Now, it may be the case that an individual stays in this level for a long period of time by way of and kind of going back and forth with his nafs lawwama, where he may be falling into misdeeds, doing tawbah, coming back, falling into misdeeds again, perhaps the same deeds. And that is, in one should not be, what is needed in this state, in this particular stage, is that he continues to march forward and to persevere. For him to fall into a state of despair would not be what is asked for in this particular level. Rather, he should continue and march forward, even if he falls back into the same deed. He needs to bring forth that tawbah again, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, and then he continues to just work harder and harder. So this is the second stage, and he calls this the maqam of tawbah. Why? Because the individual is constantly in a state of falling into misdeeds, doing tawbah, coming back, and then perhaps falling into misdeeds again. And like I said, this is the level where the vast majority of Muslims fall into. And then we have the third level, which is the level of an yattaqiya ash-shubuhat, where the individual has refrained from falling into misdeeds, but here he wants to avoid those matters which are even doubtful matters. As we all know, there are things that are black and white, and those are clear as per the hadith. And there are those things that are going to be what we call the gray area, where it may be permissible, it may not be, it may be better to. And so in these particular matters, this individual ensures that he stays away from those matters that create some type of doubt within him. So he wants to be crystal clear that whatever he's indulging in, that it is from the halal. So this is the third state. And then the fourth state is, and this third state, he calls it the state of maqam al-wara, or the state of what we can call scrupulousness in English. And then the fourth level is وَأَنْ يَتَّقِيَ الْمُبَاحَاتِ. And this is where those matters where not only is he refraining from doubtful matters, but now the individual is bringing forth taqwa and refraining from matters that are even permissible matters, mubahat. And this is the maqam of asceticism or zuhd. And we have examples of this in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, where we have some narrations where it was mentioned that he didn't eat meat for sometimes not the stove, but what we can call is no fire was lit within his home to cook meat for up to 4 months at a time. So this shows that obviously eating meat is permissible, but out of the zuhud of the Prophet ﷺ, he refrained from such matters that were even permissible for him and for the ummah. And this was his asceticism towards the dunya. So this is the fourth level of taqwa that Ibn Juzay describes. And then the final fifth level he describes as وَأَنْ يَتَّقِيَ حُضُورَ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ عَلَى قَلْبِهِ, that he makes sure that he brings forth taqwa, fear of the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from having any type of thought within his heart and mind that is other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a very high level. And this is more of the level of what we can describe the prophets and the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my reason and rationale for going into these 5 levels that Imam Ibn Juzay describes again is for you as a listener to listen to these 5 levels and make a cognizant struggle in your mind of where you lie within these levels and what you need to do in this level that you're in and how to aspire to the next level. And I hope that that can be understood from what I've conveyed to you. From here, I want to talk about, I was reading a book, which is a commentary on Imam al-Nawawi's Arba'in. It's called Al-Fath al-Mubin by Ibn Hajar al-Haytami al-Shafi'i al-Makki, famous hadith scholar as well as a Shafi'i jurist, lived about 500 years ago. And he's wrote a commentary on the Arba'in of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahumullah. And he speaks about taqwa at great length on in one of his comments regarding a particular hadith. And I found it to be very beneficial, specifically where he brings forth certain ayah from the Quran and dealing with taqwa, and then tells you the benefit of this particular ayah that speaks about taqwa. So I want to just mention a few so that we can understand some further benefits of bringing forth taqwa. So for example, he mentions the ayah, وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ كَيْدُهُمْ شَيْئًا. That if you have sabr, if you have patience, and you have taqwa, وَتَتَّقُوا لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ كَيْدُهُمْ شَيْئًا. That the plotting, the cunningness, the deception, the scheming of the disbelievers will not harm you in the least at all. And Ibn Hajar, he describes this ayah as that what can be derived from this ayah is بالحفظ من الأعداء, that protection from enemies, from the enemies. Now, the reason why I wanted to mention this particular ayah is that we also realize that we live in a day and age of extreme and great Islamophobia. And many people, even outside of the entire COVID-19 scare, many people still have this fear even before the onset of the virus. And I'm sure inshallah, after the virus goes away, that people will still have this fear about what about the enemies of Islam? What about the enemies within our own country here in the US? The rise of Islamophobia. What to do about that? And that question is a valid question, and the concern is still a valid concern. And so I felt that this was a good ayah to show that what we can do is to have patience, to increase our taqwa. And so long as you do this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as per this verse, is mentioning to you that the plotting of those people, the cunningness, kayduhum. Kayd literally means to some type of plotting by way of deception, to having a certain type of cunning behavior, scheming against individuals. All of that will not harm that particular Muslim who has patience and has taqwa. And so this is very important to keep in mind in the context that we live in. Another benefit of taqwa that Imam Ibn Hajar brings forth is وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يُكَفِّرْ عَنْهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِ وَيُعْظِمْ لَهُ أَجْرًا. And he calls us that whosoever has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expiate his sins and magnify his reward. And he calls this al-bushra bi kafarat al-dhunub wa ta'zim al-muttaqi bi ta'zim ajrihi. That he calls us the glad tidings for the expiation of one's sins and the magnification of the one who has taqwa by the magnification of his deeds, of increasing his deeds. A third benefit that I found very important and beautiful that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah brings forth is the ayah وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. That if you have taqwa, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will teach you. And he calls this at-tawfiq lil-ilm, that divine enablement, or that divinely given success for ilm, for knowledge. A fourth one he brings forth is وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. that whosoever has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make easy his affair. And again, this is very important back into our current context with the COVID-19 virus. A lot of people feel like their life has become very constricted rather, and has become very difficult. And they're looking for ease. They're looking for yusr. And so Ibn Hajar, he says that this ayah is evidence of al-yusr wa sahula fil amr, that of ease and for in one's affairs, that if you bring for taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ease you in whatever affair that you're finding to be constricted within. And then and the most important thing that I really like that Ibn Hajar mentions in his commentary, that I really wanted to convey to everyone, is the end goal of taqwa. You know, we in the beginning of this segment, we defined taqwa as bringing forth some type of protection in order to develop a fear from the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's important to keep in mind that this particular definition is not the goal of taqwa. Rather, we mentioned in the beginning that it is a safety mechanism. So then it begs the question of what exactly is the goal, the end objective of bringing forth taqwa. And Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he says that the end goal is وَهِيَ مَحَبَّةُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَمُوَالَاتُهُ. He says that the end goal is having the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gaining the friendship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is very important because oftentimes we have this misconception in our minds that that taqwa is the goal of taqwa is just to have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment or from his anger. But that's not, like we mentioned, that is a means to an end. But the end goal, the real end objective, is to become the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to reap that mahabbah, that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that muwalatu, and his friendship, to become from the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such that we fall into the meaning of the verse, وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, so that we are from those people who do not fear, and we do not, and fear does not strike them, nor any type of sadness. And so this is the end goal of having taqwa, and I hope I've conveyed that in a manner which can be understood. From here, I want to talk about something else that Ibn Hajar mentions that is very equally important, and that is that he mentions at the very end that the importance of having knowledge. And he says that one cannot hope to have taqwa if he doesn't have that base amount of knowledge that is required by every Muslim. And he says that because إِذِ الْجَاهِلُ لَا يَعْلَمُ كَيْفَ يَتَّقِي, because an ignoramus, a person who's ignorant, does not even know how to bring forth taqwa, does not even know how to have taqwa. لا من جانب الأمر ولا من جانب النهي, not from the standpoint, from the perspective of what is ordained upon him to follow, nor from the perspective on what has been ordained upon him to refrain from. Because this, you would only know what is required for you to do and what is required for you to refrain from if you have knowledge. And so he mentions that it is incumbent upon every Muslim to have that base amount of knowledge in order to even start to walk on this path of taqwa. There is no hope for that individual who wants to walk the path of taqwa, but has not ensured that he has that base knowledge. And so I wanted to convey to everyone that this is something that is a personal obligation upon all of us, that we should make sure that we have that sufficient amount of knowledge that is required for us as Muslims, so that we can begin to walk the path of taqwa. And in this vein, we have the narration of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, يَسِيرُ الْفِقْهِ خَيْرٌ من كثير العبادة. That a little bit of understanding is greater than a lot of ibadah without any understanding. So you should never find yourself in a condition or in a state where you become an abid, you become a great worshiper, but you have not fulfilled the base amount of personal obligatory knowledge that is upon you, because it may be such that you are unaware of what you're doing, if it's correct or if it's incorrect. And then finally, I want to close by mentioning that the reason for going into speaking about taqwa in times of difficulty was so that we can find relief in the current situation. We have a narration by a famous tabi, Talq ibn Habib, radiallahu anhu, where he said that إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْفِتْنَةِ فَأَطْفِئُوهَا بِالتَّقْوَى. That if you find that fitna has occurred around you or in your life, then literally extinguish it or stifle it by taqwa. So this shows that this was the understanding of the Salaf al-Salihin, that they understood that when a fitna struck them, then immediately, to literally, as if like if a fire were to strike your home, or and you need to put it out, you need to extinguish it. The first thing you would do is go for water. In the same way, if a fitna strikes you, the Salaf al-Salihin, their protocol was immediately increase your taqwa, because that will extinguish that fire of fitna better than anything else that you may bring forth. So in closing, I wanted to convey to everyone the importance of having taqwa, not just in times of adversities, but also outside. And I hope that I've conveyed that here in these two parts. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a relief from this particular fitna that we're involved in currently with the COVID-19 virus, and for all other affairs that people need ease in and have found some type of constriction. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for relief. And I thank you, and I thank the Islamic Foundation for allowing me to offer some nasiha. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.